Good evening, everyone. Those of you following us on social media, those of you here on the Zoom webinar, and those of you who will be watching later as we archive all of our Portuguese Beyond Borders Institute events on two different platforms, which is, of course, YouTube and at the Henry Madden Library at Fresno State. The library is part of the Portuguese Beyond Borders Institute Oral History Collection. We archive all of the different conversations and presentations that we have that especially are in reference to the Portuguese American experience in California. And so we're very excited to have today's presentation, and also because it's not because of that, but also because of it, it is our final presentation for the fall of 2021. In Portuguese, we have this wonderful phrase, which is called fechar com a chave de ouro, which means that you close it with a golden key. And so that's what we're going to do. We're going to close the lecture series with the golden key. And we're very happy to have this couple here with us, and you'll get to know them. That is what our objective is for the next 45 to 50 minutes, and talk about their experiences in the Portuguese American community, a very unique project that they'll be putting forth here very, very shortly, in book, in an exhibit, and many other ways. But once again, welcome everyone. And let's take a little bit of time, first of all, to do the intro. So I'm going to have both of you introduce yourselves to the Portuguese American community, those who are following us here on Zoom webinar and through the Facebook Live.
I'm Jackson Nichols. I'm a photographer for at least 30 years. And I've done a documentary on basically Portuguese culture and the Holy Ghost.
And I'm Diana Fernandez Nichols, his wife. And when I was doing my master's in anthropology, I chose to do it on Portuguese identity, and that was through ritual. And so I dragged Jackson along with me to take pictures of things. He's never stopped taking pictures since the first time. And so that is how he's gotten very involved in this. I grew up in Mission San Jose. The IDES was here. I marched in the festivals. Every year you had the festas, you had all of that. And so I knew spring and summer as a time of going to neighboring communities and all for their festas too.
Well, thank you both for joining us. I'm also fascinated by your work on your master thesis on, and maybe we could talk a little bit about that. It's been a few years, but
yeah, it's been a few years.
I think there hasn't been a lot of things that changed. And did you ever publish your work?
No, I didn't. I just have my thesis here, and I had given it to the
Freitas Library, I believe.
Freitas Library, a copy. And because I worked a lot with the Hayward IDES, I gave them a copy also. So that's probably the only ones that are, out there, except for at Cal State, Hayward, or East Bay. I think there's one.
Yeah, I'm sure they have to have one. But Dan, tell us a little bit, if you don't mind, before we turn to Nichols, because from what he explained to me, and as you just explained, that was one of the major reasons that got him taking pictures. And as you put it, he never stopped. He started taking pictures of the Portuguese American festas, celebrations, and never stopped. So first of all, tell us a little bit, if you don't mind, about your work. What was your master thesis about it, and how did you come to it?
Basically, it was about how identity is maintained and established through ritual. And so the idea that you could have people who live within both cultures, both communities, and you have these festas where you come together, and it not only is a time to, in a sense, enjoy old friends and everything, it also reestablishes or confirms your identity, your values. And so it's, I think, been a way to maintain that Portuguese identity. Now in Mission San Jose, it kind of fell apart, which was, I think, the very first IDES, and it fell apart because of language. And you had a younger generation, which was actually my father's generation, that many didn't speak Portuguese anymore, yet they wanted to maintain the Portuguese language. So younger people didn't join. And so I was looking at that too, and how you maintain that sense of identity, even if you're losing language. What is it that you choose to save? What is it that you think really signifies who you are? And so it was basically just looking at that on how you, it's kind of roundabout because this was written over 30 years ago. But
Sure. But the issue is still with us, even amplified to a certain degree, because your father's generation and 30 years later, we see now the younger generation also being involved, but lacking the language skills. That is one of the things that we have in California, as you said. And the U.S. Census is pretty clear about that. According to 2010, we don't have 2020 yet, but according to 2010, 350,000 Californians pretty much identified as being of Portuguese background. But of those 350, less than 33,000 said they still spoke some Portuguese at home. So you're talking less than 10%,
and
that's yeah.
Yeah, for the state, really representative of what I saw and experienced here. And so to me, it's like for one generation, language was such an important part. But as that went away, you have to decide then what else is important, because you are losing that, and you can't, in a sense, force people, especially kids, to learn something that's not there in school or in part of their, environment. But
Well,
yeah.
I'd love to, first of all, to have a copy of it. So if you have a spare copy that you can get me, I'd love to have a copy of your thesis. And I think it's a pertinent issue, and then maybe we could even, work on it and publish it through PBBI, because I think there's a lack of these studies, whether they were done last week or, last decade or a couple of decades ago. Unfortunately, there aren't a lot of studies done on the Portuguese identity within the state of California. And sometimes, as you probably found, I don't know, you tell me, you didn't find a lot of bibliography at that time.
If you found a book, it was so exciting.
So it wasn't the easiest thing in the world to find 20 or 25 bibliography things that you could latch on to. Yeah. Well, hopefully you can continue working with it, because it is an issue that, as I said, that has been amplified. So, and thank you for your work on that. That was, I wasn't aware, and I don't think the community is aware, but I think that's something that maybe we could look at if you're interested as we go on.
Mm-hmm.
So you took basically Nichols around for him to shoot some pictures, so he could kind of,
illustrate
your work that you were doing. And so Nichols, this was, about 3 decades ago, about 30 years ago. I don't know which sounds better, 3 decades or 30 years.
30 years.
Yeah. Sometimes when I do those, I try to just say 3 decades, because sometimes people don't add 10 times 3 is 30. But when you began doing this, this was all new to you, or had you had experience with the Portuguese American community before, Nichols?
Not at all, no. And so it was really fascinating to me, the pageantry of it, the color of it. Photography was really easy. People were expecting to be photographed, especially in the processions with the queens and all their capes and everything. So it was an easy entree, as well as when I went to these festas, it was like visiting another country, because at those festas, you don't hear a lot of English spoken. At least in those days, it was mostly Portuguese, because everybody was, practicing their language. So it felt like visiting a foreign country, and with the culture and everything was different. So I just kept going and photographing. In the beginning, I would go to like the big ones, like the OLM, in Gustine, or Thornton with the OLF. Those were really the big ones where they got all the queens together, and it was really a lot of to do and then they had the Baudelaires there as well. So all of that was really fascinating to me. But then as it went along, I started attending, the less pomp or the less large ones, and just getting the culture and the flavor of the different communities, from Santa Clara to Patterson, and then Thornton, Stevenson. And so I just started photographing it without any intention of, what to do with these things. It was just interesting photography. And I was shooting all black and white film, and it just kind of snowballed. So finally, I wanted to put something together to take these 30 years of photography and put them together into an exhibit and a book. And so then I approached the Carnegie Arts Center in Turlock, and they gave me a shot at an exhibit.
When you began to, so take us back when you said that you, 30 years ago or thereabouts, when you began taking these pictures, it was like visiting a different country because it was mostly all Portuguese. Have you noticed that there is less and less Portuguese spoken at the Festas, and it's more of a, I mean,
I have.
if you had a problem understanding people 30 years ago, it's the other way around now. Everybody understands you, huh?
Yes, exactly. But the thing is that if I wanted to communicate, I could just turn to somebody and speak in English, and everybody spoke English. I didn't find very many people who didn't, but at those festas, they would speak Portuguese. And so that was the interesting thing. But I know the old folks still speak Portuguese to each other, but the younger generation doesn't seem to as much.
So you go ahead, please, Diane.
I was just going to say it. Some of them, again, here in Fremont, even, you have it say Portuguese. It's in Centerville, the one. It's the Festa, but you also have Filipino community that comes to it. You have sometimes Mexican community. So along with the supa, you have lumpia. You have, so it's becoming very Americanized as a kind of a more inclusive group, which I think is kind of fascinating in some places that you see it. And you also see it with the forcados. That you're bringing other people into the Portugueseness of the community. And that I hadn't seen earlier on. It was pretty strictly Portuguese.
And you think that this is because of the younger generation, or being in, younger generation, the older generation, let's put it that way, probably there weren't as many folks who married outside of the ethnicity, until about maybe 35, 40 years ago. And so do you think the younger generation are the ones bringing in this younger blood that is all, as you said, not necessarily Portuguese, either part Portuguese or non-Portuguese at all, but from other ethnicities that compose, a very multicultural state?
I think a lot of it is because I think a lot of people, myself included, married somebody who wasn't Portuguese, and as my father used to always tell him, he would feed him different things and say, we're turning you brown from the inside out. So if you eat enough of the food, you're Portuguese.
Kind of like that. That's a good.
I really got a flavor for Marcella too. So
there you go. So Portuguese foods. So you just basically continue taking these pictures from different perspectives. And as you said, Nichols, you try to, Jackson, mostly do black and white. Is that what?
Yes, and almost exclusively, because I have a darkroom, and digital was coming along, but I don't shoot a lot of color anyway. I was always sort of based in black and white, so it was just a natural. I had the cameras. I didn't have to buy any new equipment. I have a darkroom. I can process my own film and make my own prints. So why fix it if it isn't broke? So
sure, that's right. So let's share, if you don't mind. I'm going to share your a little bit of what the book is going to be about, and so before we start that, before we do share, I believe you in the beginning you were talking that you may have over 10,000.
Easily. I have binders of my shots. They're not all Portuguese festas, but there's a lot in there on on the Festas. There's a lot on bullfights. Since about 2010, I was focused on forcados, and a new group of forcados started in 2015. I was really focused on documenting them from the very beginning, the standpoint of what it takes to become a forcado. Because when I first saw it in the arena, I thought it was just a bunch of crazy guys trying to grab a bull and be chased around by a bull. But as I investigated it more and made some friends that were forcados, I realized that there's a lot of strategy to it. There's assigned positions. There's there's a purpose. There's a lot of training that goes into it. And so then I wanted to document that, and a history as well.
Correct.
So I wanted to document that because a lot of people don't understand sort of the depth of commitment that these forcados make when they decide to become a forcado, because it ain't easy and it's very dangerous.
Well, yeah, we're going to. I think you have for us some images that you've taken of the different forcado groups, and so and especially the one you've been concentrating on, and we'll talk about that as well. How did what was the process that you took, and how long did it take you to go through those nearly 10,000? Let's say 65-70% of those are about festas without the forcados. So what was the process of selecting the ones that you are going to include in your book and in the exhibit itself?
Well, it's pretty overwhelming when you start out with it, because you start looking back, and I needed some unifying factor to be able to have a focus. Okay, and so because I wanted to have it around the exhibit, basically, that I have it at Carnegie, but I didn't have a real focus for that. And then, in talking with you, we came up with the idea of having poetry to be sort of the focal point for the concentration of images. So once I had that, then I could start, culling them down and making choices. And then as further along, as I got into the poems, then it became pretty obvious what worked with it and what didn't. From 10,000 images or negatives, I probably selected maybe close to 500, 700 negatives that I wanted to look at. And then I made small 2x3 inch prints of those and started putting them up on a wall. And basically just trying to see what went together, what helped tell that story, and just sort of lining them up. I was using fun tack on the boards and just making different arrangements till they really started to work. And it's a monthly. It took several months to basically cull them down to. There's 72 images in the book, and that's basically what I ended up with. But it took many months.
Almost 10,000, you were able to get it. You were able to be happy with 72.
72,
which is quite a few.
Yes.
But a drop in the bucket, of course, of nearly 10,000. So let's talk a little bit about the idea of the book. As you mentioned, first you approached the Carnegie Arts Center in Turlock for an exhibit, and you said they were receptive, but that took a couple of years, correct?
Yeah.
To put it all together?
So they have a time where they're accepting proposals, and so I put a proposal in, and in about 2018, maybe 2018, and they reviewed it, and basically I put some samples of the Holy Ghost, some samples of bloodless bullfighting images, and then did a quick write-up about what I thought, what the exhibit could be. And they got back to me and said, yeah, we're interested. We have a schedule. They schedule the lobby gallery, which I can get 60 prints up in the lobby gallery. And but they schedule it years in advance. So they said, yeah, we'll give you a time in 2022. And so I go, I'll take it.
Sure.
That gave me a lot of time, and I figured I could update some of those Festa images in 2020, which turned out not to be the case. But
correct.
But I had plenty to draw from. So
sure, and that's something else. So this is basically the history of the Festas pre-pandemic, because we've all seen lots of changes, and there'll be very different celebrations post-pandemic in one way or
Yeah.
another.
Yeah.
So a little bit about the exhibit itself. When does it kick off for those who are watching? When does it start, and for how long will it run?
Okay. It's at the Carnegie Art Center in Turlock, and it starts, the opening night is on February 4th, 2022. It's a Friday night from 5 to 7. And then the exhibit runs for 3 months through the end of April.
Wonderful. And we need to really work with our good friends in Turlock, and we have some mutual friends as well, and get especially Turlock and Hilmar have one of the strongest Portuguese language programs, and it'd be wonderful to get those high school students to visit the arts
Yes.
center and actually learn a little bit. So we'll have to work with our colleagues in education to get that, and even non-Portuguese. I mean, not just Portuguese
Oh,
classes,
yeah. Yeah. No,
any
I
cultural
think
classes at elementary school, etc.
there's a large Portuguese population in Turlock, but I don't think they're really that familiar with the Portuguese community. So I think this is sort of an educational thing as well.
Sure.
One of the other things that I'm doing, we're having like a Portuguese culture night, basically, where I'm working with the gallery there to sponsor an evening of fados, fadista singers, folkloric groups. So it'll be a couple of hours of those presentations, and then I'm also
Music and dance.
yeah, music and dance, and and then there'll be another night where I have some videos that I've done, some of bullfight that I attended with the group in Terceira, where they were invited for San Joaninas in 2019. And so I went with the group, and we spent 10 days in Portugal, I mean, in the Azores there. And we culminated in a bullfight at the bull arena in Angra in Terceira. And so
you have all that documented as well.
I have all that is documented as well. Yeah. So I
I
want to
may-
show that, as well as I did a video of the formation of Los Americanos. It is from the very beginning, their training and all that led up to their first bullfight. And just that was in 2015. And then since then, they've had a number of bullfights. And this year, after Thornton, the original captain, Michael Lopes, turned in his jacket. And so it's being taken up by the next captain, and it's a new chapter in Los Americanos. So I've sort of come full circle. And so I want to add that into the video, and then this will be basically that complete story.
Okay,
I would
interesting.
like to also just kind of throw something out there as a possibility during this time. I absolutely loved the poetry that
Yes. Yeah.
Jackson has and gotten for this. And so to find those poets and perhaps have a night of poetry reading too could be pretty cool. Just a thought.
I'm sure, and I'm sure they'd be more than happy to accommodate.
Two out of three would be easier. Lara Goulart and Diana Ramos Firestone. They both live in California.
Oh, nice.
Vasco Pereira Costa lives in Coimbra, Portugal. That may be a tough go.
Yeah.
But I'm sure he'd love to go if to come over if we could get somebody to sponsor it. So let's talk about to have this in order to have this exhibit, and it will end, as you said, in April. So after April, what are you going to do with it? Put it in the garage somewhere, or is it a plan?
I would love to show it somewhere else, but I haven't reached out really with any effort to find a new venue for it. I would love to see something at Fresno State. I'd love to see something in Tulare. I'd love to see something even in Santa Clara at the Trident Museum, if I could, hook something up with there, because with the Santa Clara has a large Portuguese council there, so that might be something that they'd be interested in. Okay,
so it's open if folks who
are totally open
watching.
Right now.
There's a possibility. Fresno State is certainly interested. We're like you. We're looking for a venue, and we have the same issue. Things are booked a year and a half ahead of time. But
I can keep it in my garage until there.
Yeah. We're looking for the right place. But I do think it would be a wonderful play. It would be great to see it at different local museums and different Portuguese halls, even during its celebration, for example. You could one could have a cultural night. High schools that have libraries could also do it like a week long. So there's lots of different things. Let's transition, of course, to the book, and folks are looking at what is this here. So explain to us what we're looking at.
Basically, it is the book that Festa, a Celebration of Faith. Basically, I photograph Holy Ghost, OLMs, OLFs, and so my original thought was to call it the Holy Ghost, but those are different. So you just ended up with the term of Festa, and what they are is basically what it comes down to is they're a celebration of faith. It's sort of revisiting culture, but it's basically it's about faith and
Indeed. And so this book is being published to kind of accompany the exhibit, correct?
the book is I worked with True North Editions, publishing house up in Washington, and it's being printed by Bookmobile in Minneapolis, Minnesota.
But it is in conjunction with the.
Yeah.
And so it is in conjunction, of course, with the exhibit. And what kind of book is it? Is it a coffee table book? Is it a smaller book? What kind of dimensions did you work with? Because photography is a little bit different.
Measures 8 by 10. I didn't want to make it too big, but it's a nice size, and it has it's a case bound book with a white cloth cover and tipped in photos, 3-inch square photos front and back. And the title is on the front and on the spine embossed in silver. So it's a very clean cover. I think it looks really nice.
Okay. And the idea is to have the book ready by opening night on February the 4th.
That's correct. Yeah, I want to have it. They have a gift shop at the center there, and it'll be available from there.
Okay, so let me see if I can get my trusty computer here to work, and I did, but it skipped one. This is one of the pages, and
yeah, this is the first spread with the Queen Nancy poem on the right, and then I have photographs to accompany it on the left. These are smaller in size photographs because I didn't want to overpower the poem. So this one and then the next one, because the poem covers over 2 pages, are smaller images. They're kind of like very precious sort of little gems. And then once we get further on, then the images become larger.
So something like this, for example.
Yes, exactly.
You recall by any chance where this photo was taken? It's kind of unique. I mean, it's very unique.
That one, I believe, is in Thornton.
Thornton.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. And so then you've taken some of these other images, and you've also used maybe a line or two from the poems that kind of correlate with it.
So the idea is that maybe people won't read the whole poem to begin with, and so I was pulling out like pull quotes almost to help, maybe to help sort of combine with the image, but also to maybe encourage people to go back and read the entire poem to see, to generate a little more interest there, because it's so hard to get people to read in a photography book. I mean, they usually just want to thumb through the pages. So I want to drive them back to the poems because the poems are so beautiful, and the images help support the poem, and the poem helps support the images. So I want to see that interconnection.
And you did this here again, of course. And so we're just looking at, of course, different images. I
really love this one because it's in the consecration of the promised land of happiness. Is somewhere between Turlock and Los Banos.
Well,
this is actually taken in Stevenson.
Yeah, I was going to say probably Stevenson, isn't it? And it's I've had the pleasure, for those of you who have already figured out with the first slide, Jackson invited me to write a very brief intro, and like he said, people don't want to read in the photography book, so I was as brief as I could be, with and trying to say a couple of maybe not very important but intelligent things about the Festas without being boring or without taking too much space. and this picture actually, and I looked at all the pictures and with great as much detail. I appreciate photography. I'm not a photographer by any stretch of the imagination. Um, and this picture kind of always, this one stood out to me, and it stood out to me that, here we have, the of both worlds. So you have the traditions of the old world with young and not so young people, because you can tell by, that there's different generations there, in a very typical American Western landscape. So it's just a beautiful picture of how culture and identity and faith can really be transposed from one area to another. So kudos to you for this picture. This picture
Thank you.
is
Thank
really,
you.
really, really lovely. And of course, it should make all the Turlock and Los Banos people very proud, because they have a sign there. And so you have a few more pictures here, correct, of the
Yes.
Festas. Okay. And this picture is also very unique, because sometimes people who have never, or who haven't been, most Portuguese Americans have been to festas, but folks who are not Portuguese Americans, of course, many have not, the great majority. But your car becomes the Queen's wardrobe center.
Yes,
You know.
exactly. And that's what I really like. I not only photograph the main event, but I like to photograph all the periphery around it, the preparation of the queens, the preparation of the ox carts and at the bodelates, and all of that preparation. There's as many photographs there as the more traditional ones. And this one I really like a lot, because it made a light breeze touch her like a loving wind. This girl was really hot. It was a really hot day. It was during mass when she was still outside, and just found a little patch of shade to sit down in. So,
Indeed. And this is a very special picture in a way that it also involves, you can tell that nowadays technology has taken over young
yes.
people, as you can
Yep.
see. Yeah, I think the cell phone gives it all away.
You
Uh-huh.
got the cell phone and the munchies. It's a
That's
bag
right.
of
That's
food
right.
they're
Yeah,
eating.
yeah, you do. Look at that. Yes, indeed. Indeed. And so here you have a little bit more of the traditional different ox carts, and folks are trying to recreate a particular
Mhm.
time in Portugal that is long gone, but it was a time that either, but mostly not them, but probably their parents or their grandparents came. And of course, you have the processions here, and always the flag is always ever so present with
Yes.
present with the
This
images.
spread worked out particularly well with the flags.
Correct, indeed. And folks on the side of the road is a very traditional thing, which now more and more, especially here in the San Joaquin Valley, you see actually the locals,
Yes.
taking up a chair, I mean, of different, as Diane said, of different of not Portuguese background, of different ethnicities. People just like enjoying sitting down and enjoying
parade.
the parade. Yeah, basically.
Mhm,
Yeah,
mhm.
indeed.
And this was the president and his wife from Stevenson. I was trying to figure it out, maybe 2007, something like that. And this is a president from the Santa Clara, also a number of years ago. And this is Maria Soares. Now, she is a seamstress that produces a lot of the capes that you see. And I interviewed her, and I think about 2009, and went to her place, and this is her work area. And then the next slide shows her with one of her capes that she is producing. And she told me, about 52 capes a year, and they're really elaborate. They're quite large, and
They're works of art.
they're works of art. Yeah, and they're heirlooms, because once they've been used for the year, then the queens basically fold them up and put them in the hope chest. So
That's right. That's right, indeed. And you said she does around 50 to 52. That's a lot of capes.
That's
That's
a
a lot of
lot.
work.
She has at least
Yeah.
one helper, maybe two at times, but there's embroidery on there, and then a lot of the larger pieces are put on with a hot glue gun. But it's quite an undertaking. So to do 52 of those is just amazing. So here's a sampling of some of them.
And
Now
this is
this was,
color.
yeah, it's color. Well, for this it had to be color. I came up with this idea, and when the queens were passing by to go to, this is in Gustine, at the OLM. And as the queens were passing by, I know all the queens don't enter into mass all the time. They basically wait outside because there's not room for everybody. And so I said, well, if you're going to be waiting outside, can I bring you over and, photograph you with your capes? And of course, they're more than willing. So this time I rounded up, I don't know, 20 or so volunteers. And then I was up on a 12-foot ladder. And so then I arranged them and then took this photo. And then the next photo, I advertised it a little bit more, and I also talked to the council, the GPS, and they brought their lift over. And so then that they used to put up the decorations around the Portuguese Hall, they drove it over here and let me use it. And I went up 30 feet and I got 62 queens and one king. If you notice, the king is right in the
Is
center.
there one
Oh, yeah, right in the center
King,
there.
King is probably from San Diego. It's a tradition.
From San Diego, yes, that's right.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
and the two queens on either side of him, San Diego has a very elaborate gowns. Yeah,
And so these are 62 queens
62 queens that I came with.
in Gustine.
Oh yeah, no, there's
Interesting.
probably more. There's probably 100 queens that go
Right,
to,
but this was in the Gustine Festa,
yeah, this is the OLM.
the Our Lady of Miracles
Yes,
in
yeah.
Gustine. This photo, I think many who are following us, whether here in the Zoom webinar or on Facebook Live, and those who watch it later, whether through, of course, YouTube or when it's archived at the library at Fresno State, this photo is famous because we've seen this photo. I think you've let the Portuguese Tribune, José Ávila, use this photo, and this photo
Yes.
has made the world. Has gone, I think, all over the world. And so kudos to you. I didn't know it was yours actually in the beginning.
Okay, yeah.
I didn't know until I was looking at this. I've known this photo for a long time. And I know that Jose Ávila gave you credit when it was published, but it's one of those things. You look at the photo, you don't look at the credit, of who
Yes.
the photographer
Now,
is at times.
the way
Yeah.
I came up with this idea is that I was looking at old photographs of previous festas in Mission San Jose here and some other festas, and they always had these large group shots. They're taken with one of those big banquet cameras, and I hadn't seen that in a long time. And so I thought, well, these capes are beautiful, and why not get a shot of them? So that was the germination of this idea. So
Yeah,
to actually have this work, he had me and our son there, and we used flour to mark out kind of lines where we wanted them to line up ahead of time. So while they were in the parade, we're making these, because we figured flour was biodegradable and wouldn't cause an issue. But yeah, we were trying to figure out how many we would have and where they would be. So
how
they
far
would,
apart so you could still see all the gowns or
and it
the
would all
capes?
be in the frame of the picture. So he had quite an elaborate thing going just to fit everybody in.
indeed. So there was some thought put into it. It wasn't just,
Yes,
hey,
yes.
get together.
So-
I mean, you can see that they're kind of, how they're lined up and everything. It's
Yeah.
very,
Otherwise,
very
it's
well
like herding
done.
cats.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Indeed. It's a beautiful picture. And like I said, and this is another take of it, right?
No,
little bit different.
this is another year. That was 2010. This is 2011.
Okay.
And then I didn't get quite the turnout. So this was the last year that I tried it. And then they didn't have the lift and everything. So it was like, all right. So I may approach them again sometime, see if I could do it again.
Sure. But this gives all three of them give a perspective that is important to keep.
Yeah.
And
now
so-
on to the bloodless bullfighting.
Now,
like
the Festa book, how much did you dedicate to bullfights, or is there in the book itself?
There's none in the book.
That's
And
right.
none in the-
I just wanted to clarify that. 'cause
Okay, yeah.
The original book I saw did not have. So
No.
from now on, we're going to see pictures that are not going to be included
in the book.
in
In
the
the book.
Festa celebration of faith. Okay.
Yeah, I was looking all over for Portuguese poetry about bullfighting, and I really couldn't find any.
Yeah, you asked me the same thing and I couldn't, but I'm sure there are some things. There's some fados that around it. But are you planning, before we continue, are you planning, is it even in the horizon to think about maybe doing a separate book on the bullfighting itself?
I have done some small ones on that,
Mm-hmm.
basically using blurbs, self-publishing.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe sometime in the future, because I continue to photograph the bullfights. I'm an aficionado, and I really enjoy it. Plus, I have access down into the trinchera, so it's really exciting. And yeah, so yeah, I definitely consider it in the future.
So Bella Vista Park, for those who don't know, is in Gastine, correct? For me if I'm
Yes,
wrong, but
correct.
yes,
Yep,
yeah, it's
yep.
one of the original bullfighting areas in California, at least for the younger generation. There's been bullfighting and there's actually been records of bullfighting back to the end of the 19th and beginning of the 20th century, but most of them were done in people's ranches, kind of, folks would invite their family and their friends or the community, and you get 100 people together and have a bullfight. But as far as a formal bull ring, Bella Vista is actually an icon.
And so when they start the bullfights, they have the sheriff's posse that comes and parades around, and then they have the local queens parade through and then they start the bullfight. And so this is let's see, this is Antonio Garcia, El Chihuahua.
Hmm.
And
you are an aficionado. You know all these names and everything.
oh, I know some of them. I don't know all of them, but I know some of them. And he was just getting prepared in the just before entering the arena. And then this is another shot of him in preparation with his a suit of light. And this is Matador Sanchez Vera, and I think he's from Mexico. But and now getting into the Caballeros, I really like this shot because it's just kind of the mystery, the magic of the Caballeros and their dance with the bulls. This is preparation. In the background is a Palfreda. This is Joanna. Let me see. Wait a minute, let me get this. Joanna Andrade, Palfreda on the right, and I'm not sure who the Caballero is on the left.
I can identify Paulo, but that's the only one.
Okay. And there's just a shot of entering the arena. That's Joao Garcia. I believe this is Joao Pamplona.
Mm-hmm.
And Joe Correa.
Joe Correa, correct.
And this is Manuel Sousa. He's studying to be a Caballero. He's also does dressage in UC Davis. Now we're getting into the Forcados. This is Donald Moda wrapping his fascia. And this is Seth from Amador's Turlock. Darren Nunes from another group. This is a group just entering the arena.
It's a wonderful shot with the footsteps.
Yeah.
Congrats, very well done.
And this is Darren Mountain, right after he went 5 times to a bull before he could grab it. And so it was, I talked to him about this photo later, and he just goes, yeah, that was a night not to be forgotten.
it kind of shows the camaraderie that there,
there most
is
definitely,
between them. Yes, yeah.
Yeah. And then this is Michael Lopes on the left and Joseph Mancito on the right. This was in Colorado. We went there for an invitation. It was just preparation, This is Juan Vargas, also Luz Americanos. And Kyle Holgun, again, Luz Americanos. Donald Moda, getting prepared. He's ironing his fajeda. So it's just all preparation. And anybody who hasn't seen Forcados in action, this is kind of the way it is. It's an 8-man team. They line up single file so that the bull only sees the lead man. And the lead man slowly approaches the bull, gets him to charge, and then takes the charge over the head over the face and grabs on around the horns. And his job is just to stay on the head. And all the other forcados behind him sort of run forward and sort of arrest the progress of the bull's charge and control the bull, stop him and keep him under control. This is sort of an action shot. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But and then training, I was talking about training earlier, and they train for months to get ready for this. It's not something you just walk out in the arena and do. And so this is called this is the practice, Torina, and 3 guys push it, and the guy that's going to be on the lead or the other group members, it's about as close as you can get to imitating the charge of an actual bull. And so it's
a little bit safer than a normal bull because it's kind of predictable. The bull is not. Right?
Yeah.
I have to tell you a little bit of a story, and those following us, and thank you all for joining us. It was the most popular thing I think I've done in my over 2-decade career at Tulare Union High School. We used to participate in the Tulare County Fair with different theme about the Portuguese culture. The students did a group that we had and still do at the high school called SOPAS, but not the SOPAS that you eat. It was the acronym for Society of Portuguese American Students. And it turned out to be SOPAS, which was great. But anyway, one year we decided, with the help of Manuel Correa, Joe Correa's brother, to have the mechanical bull, as they call it, kind of, that in the parade, and everybody wanted to jump in from the side and wanted to be the lead cabo, on it. So it was for that 2.5 mile parade route. It was the most popular thing.
Oh, I'm sure
that security had to keep people away from.
There's a shot in action. There's another lineup with and then it's just very tiring, So I thought this was a pretty nice shot of just pretty exhausted. And then here's the passing on of the tradition. These are the pastors that help control the bull in the arena, and that's the slides.
Okay, well, and perfect timing as well. So, but we should remind folks, those of you watching, that the book itself will not feature that second part of the forcados. Now, your exhibit, does the exhibit feature forcados, or what is your exhibit going
to? It does. Now the lower floor, because it's 2 levels. There's a mezzanine and then the main floor and the lobby. So the lobby is going to echo pretty much the couple of chapters from the book. It'll be basically, the Festas, and Festa related. I'll have a couple of the poems posted, and then a selection of the images from the book will also be on the walls. And then on the 2 landings on the way up, there will be, I think one is going to be the ox carts, and the others is just some portraits of some of the different attendees and forcados. And then on the top floor is going to be devoted to bloodless bullfighting. I'm going to have like 7 images each of the caballeros, matadors, and forcados.
So we've had a lot of different, some folks that have sent some comments in and some thanks, but journalist Ana Rita Guerra, who is an excellent journalist from Lusa, Portuguese news agency, and who also writes wonderful op-ed pieces for the Portuguese press. We're happy to have her on. And she said, if you would like to have this exhibit travel around the state of California, and that is actually the idea. I think that we'll need to work on that, and I'll be more than happy to help as much as I can, Jackson, and I know other folks will, because I think once it's done in Turlock, of course, and I actually do think that besides the Portuguese venues, which is a great place for them to be, your idea of having it at the Carnegie Arts and a venue that is kind of, let's put it, for lack of a better word, mainstream, where everybody of all ethnic groups go to, not just to the Portuguese Festa, where it is open to everyone and everybody, but it seems like the Portuguese community tend to go more, of course, to their own hall. And that's why we thought that Fresno State and maybe a consortium with other universities, maybe San Diego State can jump on board with us, and a couple other state university systems, and even in the Portuguese community, where, as you mentioned, Tulare, where hoping that the museum here at Tulare is interested, even if it's just a 10-day or even just a 1 day, or
I'm
one
open.
weekend.
Mhm.
But I do think, and Anahita is right, it needs to be traveled throughout, and we'll need to work on that. So that's the idea. The idea is to do that. Thanks to all the comments. There is one question from our good friend Mike Moyle who's done an excellent job and was our guest here a few weeks ago at one of our events, and is a historian for the Portuguese community in South Marin, in the Sausalito area. And he's talking about, was the practice of furcados associated with any particular Azorian islands? I never heard of it here in Marin County, where many were from São Jorge. That's a very good question, Mike. As Jackson traveled to Terceira, and so Terceira is the capital, let's put it, in the Azores of the bloodless bullfights, or not bloodless there. They're bloodless here, just regular bullfights there, although they don't kill the bull.
They don't
like in
kill the bull
Mexico.
in the arena, yeah.
It
But they
just,
do use the
they use the real thing, and they
yeah.
don't put, they don't put, as you saw in the picture, one of the pictures that Jackson shared with you, there was one picture where they put the Velcro over the pillow, as I call it, over the bull. They don't do that in Portugal, but there is a praça, a bull ring now in São Jorge. There is a praça also in Graciosa, but the main has always been Terceira. It is not a 9-island thing. São Miguel does not, which has half of the population of the Azores, actually over half now, does not have bullfights at all. The other islands don't. So it basically is very in with the culture of the island of Terceira. And because São Jorge and because Graciosa are close to Terceira, and at one time they were part of, during the Salazar regime, the dictatorship, they were part of the district. It was the district of Angra. There was those 3 islands. And so because of that, there's a bit of a tradition in São Jorge, and which is growing, has grown actually, and a bit of a tradition also in Graciosa, but no tradition in the other 6 of the 9 islands. So, and furcados, even in Terceira, as Jackson was able to see, it is not something that a bullfight. There's days in Terceira there are 2 or 3 bullfights, but it's the bullfight on the rope. It's not the bullfight on the ring. The bullfight on the ring in Terceira, there's maybe 5 a year, okay, because it's an expensive proposition and it's a small island, and usually they don't have a whole lot of bullfighters. I mean, they have Pamplona, João Carlos, and folks from his family, that one of the pictures that Jackson showed, but it's most of the bullfighters come from the outside. They have this wonderful tradition of trying to bring a furcado group, like the group that Jackson accompanied to Terceira, from the communities. But it's bullfights on the ring in the island of Terceira is basically about 4 to 5 times a year, usually about 3 during the São Joaninas. And then the Festas de Praia, which is the other big festivals in Terceira, there's usually 1, sometimes 2, and then maybe another one at a different season. So it is basically from the island of Terceira. And when you say, Mike, that São Jorge, there's not a tradition. And it also depends where you went to, although the Marin County of 100 years ago was a rural area. It seems like, other than there's a couple of bullfights here and there, in different areas, but other than an established bull ring, with not on the rope, Artesia has one in the middle of a city, but most of these, and Jackson has been to many of them, are in rural areas.
Mhm.
Yeah, so it's not like, what's that?
I was going to say there used to be one in Santa Cruz too, a long time ago. It's like,
Interesting.
it hasn't been there for a very long time,
Yeah.
but yeah, so there's kind of a history of some that have faded too.
Indeed. And here in the south part of the valley, so now some of the like the TDS Hall in Tulare has a praça, but before they used to use the county fairs. Or in Layton, for example, that's had bullfights for many years, Our Lady of Fatima Festa, and they use the rodeo grounds. So
actually, they had a bullfight in Turlock at the Portuguese festival this year.
And
Correct.
at
And
San
it was at the
Jose.
fairgrounds, yeah.
Remember the one just recently in San
In
Jose?
San Jose as well, at the fairgrounds. It took a
Correct.
couple of years ago, yeah. But they
Indeed.
come and go.
Yeah, so it's as far as roots in the Azores, it's of course a very mainland Portugal tradition, and it kind of found its roots, and there's some history behind it. And I would bore you with it, but it would uh, it's kind of very very unique to the island of Terceira, with a little bit in São Jorge and Graciosa, but nothing at all in the other six of the nine islands of the Azores. Any other questions? If not, we're just about out of time. So we actually did very, very well. We promised an hour. We did start a few minutes late. So thanks to all of you who are joining us. If there are any questions, we'll be here. So please do ask. Jackson, it's I know that you are trying to work with a couple of Portuguese American and Portuguese organizations for sponsorships of the book, because it's a book of that magnitude has a cost, and obviously you're hoping and you will sell them. But what drove you to this? I'm not going to call it a wild idea, but certainly certainly an adventurous idea of using that high quality of a cover, paper, and everything else that makes it a lot more expensive.
Yeah, I've tried other, like self-publishing with like Blurb and a couple of others like that, and the quality just wasn't there. And so I wanted something that could accompany the show. And it's like the exhibit goes up, but then it comes down. And so you need to have something that stays behind, that stays together. So I wanted to produce a book. And at this point, I just wanted to produce the best book that I could and just go for it and then see if I could sell some copies. And so that's basically it. I just wanted a nice quality book that, I'd be proud to put out for sale. So
He's an artist at heart, so he wanted it to be an art book.
Sure. And photography is a very important art.
Yes.
And I think that folks will be, hopefully, those of you joining us were enticed to go to Turlock if you're around the Turlock area, even if you're a half hour, 45 minutes, or an hour away. I'm sure we'll be giving information. The Carnegie Arts will be open at different times, and so folks can enjoy that. And then we can have, of course, work on it being an exhibit that actually goes to different parts of California, and acquire the book, because it's there's books on Festas. Tony Goulart did an excellent book on the Portuguese Festas in California of the Portuguese Heritage Publications, but it's a history book basically with a few photographs, obviously, to illustrate. But this is really dedicated to the art of photography, correct?
yes.
Yeah. So the poems are there because they kind of illustrate, and there's, you just saw one of the poems, which was from Vasco Pereira da Costa, and a few of those excerpts that Jackson used. But there's actually two poems, I believe, that Jackson used from Lara Goulart, which are excellent. One about herself as a queen, and the pictures that Jackson chose are magnificent with it, and one by Diane Ramos Firestone, that talks about the Portuguese hall and the wine and all of the different the tremoço and everything else, and he's again has chosen some excellent pictures that go along with that theme of the poem. So congratulations, Jackson and Diane. We need to talk a little bit more about your work, because I think it is still very relevant to visit the identity of your master's was in in cultural anthropology, I believe it was, or
Yes, cultural anthropology.
fascinating.
I think I would rewrite it if I were doing it.
Sure. Well, it's fascinating theory. I mean, fascinating area of study, cultural anthropology, and it's fascinating that you did, and we are grateful that it is at the Freitas Library and a couple other places. But I think we should revisit it, because I think that there's a lot of issues that we have never talked about around identity, around culture and acculturation, the losing of the language. How do you pass it on? It's things that we're talking about now, but they've been in the Portuguese American community, for 30 or 40 years ago. And just not too long ago, we had a panel discussing this, and there's a couple of writings from the 50s, before this new wave of immigrants that came after the earthquake, after the volcano in 1958, and then the Family Unification Act. But people writing in the late 40s and early 50s and saying, we're very concerned because the Portuguese community is dying, because they weren't expecting this new wave of immigration. And indeed, if we didn't have this new wave that came after 1958, the Portuguese community would have been very, very different than what it is today, because they brought in new ideas, the Furcado idea, for example, and some of the other things as well. Some of these new groups, I don't know, you said that the Luso-Americanos were founded in what year? That you
2015.
See,
Yeah,
it's something of already of this millennium in this century. And so, yeah, there's lots of new things that are happening. But some of the issues that you touched on your thesis, I'm sure, are still very relevant today. So we'll need to visit. Again, thanks both of you, and thanks to all of you for joining us. It is a wonderful book. Look for it. Look for the exhibits, and it is a very, very interesting way to honor what has been done throughout the years in the Portuguese American community. Again, thanks, Jackson, and thanks, Diane. And thanks all of you for joining us. Okay, take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.